Alrighty. And just like that, we are back with another episode of Wrestling with Wi-Fi.
Because the following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Ladies and gentlemen, weighing in at amazingly entertaining, I want to welcome to the ring the greatest, most technically sound podcast on the face of the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Wrestling with Wi-Fi. Tuning in right now.
Alrighty, and just like that, we are back indeed. It's a little bit of an interesting one. I'm not actually in my usual home location. I'm actually on the road in Phoenix for wlpc, and this is being recorded on Wednesday night. So basically, conference has a half a day left. Most of it's in the bag, and figured it's a good time to record with the idea of dropping this one on all the usual podcast sites so that hopefully people might have 15 or 20 minutes of entertainment to listen to on their way home tomorrow, or Friday if you're leaving later. So with that in mind, back again. Can't remember last time I recorded, but we're going to get a little recap. So if you're listening to this, hopefully you're either one of my longtime 10 or so fans, or maybe you've heard about it now from WLPC, since I'm trying to hype it. I only gave a few stickers out, but we'll see. I'm still here. So there's still time to get rid of some more tomorrow and tonight. But anyways, so yeah, it's been a usually exciting week back in Phoenix. It's always good to get back to see everybody. I believe this is probably the biggest one they've ever done. So thinking we had about 350 participants. I've been out here since Friday, doing a boot camp, and usually for me, or at least the prior couple experiences as a boot camp attendee, I was a student. I did my CWNA back in 2017 with Blake, and I did my CWAP back in 2019 with Peter, and that was it. I came back last year. No boot camp for me. This year I did a boot camp, but I taught it. I was teaching the RCWA boot camp, which is the Ruckus Certified Wireless Associate. So it was a big step up for me. Was pretty excited about it. Definitely a little bit terrified. I was telling Jim Palmer, a coworker of mine, I think I texted him Friday when I landed, that about an hour from touchdown, I was like, oh God, I'm actually going to have to teach. And that's not like I didn't want to do it. It was more like just the sheer terror of realizing that you've got these people that are taking time out of their lives, their schedules, and spending money to spend a week out here. Effectively, you figure boot camp attendees, generally speaking, they arrived on Friday and we're all leaving tomorrow. So, 6 days it's a chunk of time when you've got a family at home or whatever. And so they came out here, and no pressure on me, but, the first 3 days of it was on me to make sure it was getting value to them. So no pressure at all. But, it was an interesting experience. Definitely had quite a few lessons learned on my end, things I need to improve, just to make sure the course gets better and I get better as an instructor. But I enjoyed it. I hope my 5 students did. I'm not sure if they'll be listening to this at all, but if they do, thank you very much, all 5 of you, for attending. And I want to thank, even though this is not my work podcast, I do want to extend a thank you to those of you in my chain of command for allowing me to do it and supporting my efforts. So couldn't have done it without all of that. And, again, thanks to Keith and everybody else for having the event and presenting or providing an opportunity for that. So it was really cool. It was definitely, intimidating, but once I got up there, it's something that, I know a bit about, having worked at Ruckus for 2 years now. Some areas are things that I don't work on a regular basis, and some areas are things that I do. And, I was able to kind of work my way in and out of all the different areas and hopefully cover everything pretty well. And actually thinking about it after the fact, because this was the first time I delivered it live, or delivered it all, really. Definitely had some good ideas of how I could make it a little bit more interactive, a lot more, I think, engaging, and less. I don't think we did a lot of reading, or lecture, I should say. It was a good banter, I think, between, or good engagement between the students and myself. We had a lot of good conversations, sharing, experiences, and that was good. I mean, I like that. I was admitting to them right up front. At the end of the day, some of them had more ruckus experience than I did, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But the reality is, some of them also had more ruckus experience in some areas, but no experience in other areas, and that was where I came in. So, but again, I'm only going to get better with time. So, so that was fun. And then ultimately, Friday became Monday, and the boot camp wrapped up, and everybody else descended on Phoenix for the wireless LAN professionals conference, because there's nothing else going on in Phoenix at all this week. There's no Super Bowl or anything, and the Eagles aren't in town to beat the Chiefs. But so everybody coming in on Monday, and the truly terrifying thing for me hit on Tuesday, and that was I gave a 10 talk on WPA3, specifically with a cloud path flare, if you will, and DPSK in particular. And it's something I know a little bit about, but that wasn't really the intimidating factor, although there were definitely some people that were asking questions that honestly we just can't answer. And I apologize, this is becoming more of a work podcast, but it happens because I'm here for this. But anyways, it was truly, I don't want to say intimidating, but there was definitely fear. I was definitely nervous, because the reality is, you're speaking in front of 350 really smart people, most of whom I will constantly feel are smarter than me. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but there's definitely, the imposter syndrome and whatnot coming into play. And it was daunting to stand up in front of everybody for what should have been 10 minutes to talk. Especially, I can't blame anything. It was an exhausting weekend, so I didn't do a whole lot of prep and rehearsal for that. So I didn't have my notes really committed to memory to be more comfortable talking about it. And I tried my best to not read the notes from the laptop. And ultimately it wound up being about 6 minutes. But I'd rather go under than over, I guess. And it kind of worked out, because I think a couple of the presenters that were doing 10 talks needed a couple extra minutes, and it all kind of worked out. And I was right before lunch, so everybody was able to eat on time. So, yay. But I will say this, and this is kind of more of those for anybody thinking about it. It didn't, it wasn't one of those things where I got it over with and I was like, I'm never doing this again. Maybe I'm a masochist. It's possible. That's usually not what I'm into. But anyways, it's more, I finished, and I wasn't going to myself like, I'm never doing this again. It was more like, yeah, I want to do this again, but I want to make sure that it's, at the end of the day, we talked about this, I think, and if we didn't, we're talking about it now. I submitted, I think, 2 or 3 talks. And I think 2 of them were definitely hardcore, what I wanted to talk about, more soft skills, and they weren't popular this year, and they weren't, I guess, last year either. And then one was more of a work-inspired talk, which was, sort of I was asked to submit it, but none of the 3 of them had traction, and either that's because the topics were terrible, my description of the topics was terrible, or nobody wanted to hear me talk. And it is what it is, right? So my hope would be that, for a future WLPC, if I'm lucky enough to attend, Prague potentially next fall or this fall, or again, more likely Phoenix next February, I'm just looking at it and saying it motivates me more to want to come back to do another talk. I don't want more than 10. I think 10 minutes is fine for me. Anything more and I might have a heart attack. But, put a really good topic together, get a really good description, and see if I can actually roll with a topic that I know, that I'm comfortable delivering, and that people want to hear, and then see what happens. I think it's very easy for me at the end of the day to hit record on a podcast, which I'm doing right now, and talk. I'm looking at myself in a mirror in the hotel room, and I'm talking. On the other podcast I do, the Ruckcast, I record with Jim, no big deal. Hundreds of people might listen to it, but I don't care. I don't see the reaction, and then, I've got the edit button. We screw something up, we pause it, we delete it, whatever. Live is definitely a different story. That was actually a conversation I had with my boot camp students. I was more terrified of the talk in front of 350 people than I was delivering 20 hours of content to them. And I think they were a little bit perplexed by that. And the reality is, I think for me, especially, like I said, I had a small class of five students. And it was more about, it felt more conversational. I think even if the class had been a little bit bigger, I think it felt more conversational. I think, maybe if it was a 15 or 20 student class, it might have been a little bit much, but I tend to believe that the boot camps tend to sit around 5 or 10, maybe. So, but not too bad. 7 or 10, something like that. I don't think that would have thrown me off too much. Just because it was like I don't want to say low key informal atmosphere. I mean, it was definitely there to work. I had my ruckus shirt on the entire time, and I was mindful of the responsibility of it all. But just there's something about talking on that stage that I look in awe of people like Jim, who I work with, and others who hop on that stage and deliver, whether it's a 10, a 20, 55, 30, whatever, and aren't nervous. Now, I mean, I'm sure that the other people are probably nervous too, and I felt like I was the most nervous one up there, and I'm sort of cringing to see the YouTube video when it hits, but that's a different story for a different day. But so where I'm going with this, the whole long and short of it really is, I'm wrapping up another WLPC, my fourth, and as with every other time I do this, I am eagerly looking forward to the next one. It's sort of a bummer that if it's only the stateside one, it's another year. It's 51 weeks away, basically, assuming they do it again this time of year as opposed to President's Week, which is usually when it's been. There's a minor thought of potentially, do I aim for delivering the RCWA in Prague? And I mean, at the end of the day, that's not entirely up to me. I do have some significant things coming up in life in the fall, which may preclude that from happening, may limit my availability. And then on top of that, even if I want to go, it doesn't really matter, right? First of all, it would have to be something that we submit and get voted in on. There would have to be interest to make sure it runs, enough students to do that. And then finally, it would be something that, leadership decides to send me versus a local resource. But I'm not against making the case to do that, depending on the timing and things. We'll see. But it was a different WLPC for me. And I say this, I know there's half a day tomorrow left before we all scatter. This one felt different. I think it's definitely bigger. Like I said, 350-ish people are here. It seems like we're not doing as much at night. But at the same point in time, as I'm getting older, I can't necessarily say I complain about that. Last couple of nights I haven't slept that great and I've been exhausted, to be honest with you, with between the stress of the talking and the prep of the class and everything. It's been tough, but I think there's Lego tonight, and some other meetings of the folks that have the Flipper Zeros and stuff. But there wasn't the Whiskey and Wi-Fi guys usually record, and I don't think they're doing that. And no pub trivia or anything like that. So it seems like I don't know if it's just not in the cards this year or it's a different crew or what. I have no idea. It just felt a little bit different in that sense, but very busy. A lot of things going on, meeting a lot of nice people. Hopefully some of you are new to the podcast that are people I met and tuned in. But, it's a different sense of excitement, I guess. Like every other year that I've left the show, I figured I'll try to talk. And it is what it is. I've never been able to. This was the first year I did any talking. So I think if anything, it motivates me. Now having been up on the stage, I'm not saying I was excited about it. I'm not saying it was like, oh my God, I got to do this again. I was terrified. But I think one thing that kind of lifts me up a little bit, and this is the beauty part of this community, was there were a lot of people coming up to me and saying, hey, good talk. And we're always our harshest critic. And I was like, there's no way you think my talk was that good. I don't think it was that good. Not even good. But for somebody to say that, regardless, I mean, it's, I'd be surprised if there were people that came out and said, dude, your talk was just absolute garbage. But maybe somebody will prove me wrong, but who knows? But, to kind of tie a nice pretty bow on it, I would say anybody listening, all, like I said, 12 of you or so, if you didn't talk, if you haven't ever talked at WLPC and you want to, there's no harm in doing it, right? At the end of the day, you put your best thoughts out there, your best ideas out there, and you go for it. Either we're going to vote for it or we're not, and keep trying until you get there. Full honesty, this wasn't even a talk that I had necessarily submitted myself, but the way it worked out, I was able to pick it up and run with it. But just go for it. I mean, 15 or so slides. I'm sure some of the people that did 10 talks had more slides, and some of the people had less. Some people talk longer to a slide and didn't click through things way too fast like I did, and some people needed a lot of slides and barely had enough time. But, if you're wondering about how long it took, I think I had something like 12 or 15 slides in total. And, it's not impossible. It's not unheard of. There's lots of interesting topics. And, just again, there's still a handful of them tomorrow, but there were some interesting topics today where some of them were very much specific to Wi-Fi in general, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 6E, AFC, converged networks and things like that. But there were some interesting ones out there that were more relevant to a particular person sharing some insight to their lives and what may or may not be beneficial to others. So it doesn't have to necessarily be specific to or exclusively relevant to Wi-Fi. If you've got something out there, you've done some, CBRS or private LTE or, anything like that, or just some really cool gizmo that you created that you use for testing that maybe somebody else doesn't or nobody's heard of or something. If you find it interesting and it's useful to you or it was helpful to you, put it out there, man. Share it. At the end of the day, there's going to be, I think, 700, 800 people responded to the surveys. It's either going to work or it's not. And you let the community decide and, let the chips fall where they may. So, yep, that's about it. Like I said, one more night tonight to go, and then tomorrow we all kind of pack up and enjoy the last 4 hours or so of the event, and then we scatter and head our separate ways. Closing with a bang tomorrow. Peter McKenzie's given the last keynote, if you will, the last opening 55-minute talk, and there's I think about 8 or so 10 talks left, and there look to be some good ones in there. So we'll see what it brings, and if there's anything earth-shattering or anything like that, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it on our next episode. But wanted to record at least once while I was out here, and again, brought everything out. I recorded an episode of the Rockcast with Jim on Sunday night, but Friday night was just exhausting. I didn't crash until late because forgot or didn't really forget, but just kind of overwhelmed with just getting everything, tracking all the packages down that we'd sent out here for the boot camp and for the show and the vendor session last night. And by the time I got all my classroom stuff set up and was ready to go for Saturday morning, it was really late, and had some other things to take care of, and it was just way too late to record. And then Saturday night, I was paying for it Saturday, and I crashed early. I was very antisocial Saturday night, but I was glad because I needed that. I went to bed early, and I felt like a new person on Sunday. I was actually at one point kind of fearful I was losing my voice, and that wouldn't be good. So I made it, maybe a little bit raspy, but I made it. So yeah, hopefully it's a little bit of entertainment for folks on their way to the airport, if they actually download it tomorrow, or Thursday, I should say, by the time this will post, or whenever. But thank you for listening. If I've got some new listeners from wlpc, I'm grateful and thank you, and I hope you got a sticker, and if you didn't, hopefully I can get you one down in the future. But thanks for listening, and I will see you guys on the next episode.